thank you for joining us at the ever-improving No Soundbites Allowed podcast. My name is Michael Vasquez. We thank you for joining us in this adventure of describing the politics that go on in our nation on a personal and local level as often as possible, giving you, the audience, more than just 30 seconds to understand what's going on in our nation. We look forward to joining you as we go. Just sit back, enjoy the ride. Please remember, if you like the episodes, like it, share it, let other people know, and if you can, please donate, even if it's $2, even if it's $5, because it all makes a difference. We thank you, and here we go.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us at No Soundbites Allowed with your favorite host, Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, and of course, I'm happy to be here with you, although I'm a little sad about the subject that we're going to be speaking about. In the wake of the Santa Fe school shooting that happened in Texas just this last week, once again, the issue of gun violence, mass shootings, school shootings is back in the news. And sadly, most of the conversation that's going on is not very honest with the public. Far too many memes, far too many 30-second sound bites, bullet points that are being thrown around to manipulate people on a very emotional level. It's dishonest and it's not fair, because we need to have a real honest answer to the question, which is the title of this podcast. Can we solve the mass shootings and school shootings that happen? And school shootings are a subset of mass shootings. So I want to focus mostly on mass shootings, although I'll talk about school shootings as well. But it's a problem. It's a big problem in our nation right now. And we have this, it's actually not a big issue in our nation right now. That's one of the things that's misled. And people are being driven by this thought that, oh my God, there's this massive increase. This is a daily occurrence. It's constantly happening. And that's just not true. It's not honest. It's not real. And I want to have a real conversation about this. I really want to talk about this with you in honest, non-emotional terms, because that's where one of the big problems comes. We aren't having an honest conversation based on a non-emotional result. We are being pumped so emotionally towards one end or the other, either of the extremes, that no one is hearing the middle ground, the factual and realistic answers that are out there. Because I do believe there are some answers. In fact, I was having my Facebook Live question and answer yesterday. That would be May 19th. I was on an hour and a half, and I have to say that 2/3 of it was talking about the Santa Fe shooting and trying to resolve what can we do to try and improve this? How can we fix this? And I want to try and address that in this podcast a little bit more, totally dedicating it to that. And so, and there's a lot of good ideas out there. There's also a lot of bad ideas. But let's understand something right off the start. It's not emotional. The second that we start getting emotional, that we allow fear or anger or any other emotion that you can think of, that when we're letting that cloud our mind, we will never get to the correct answer. And that's true of any aspect of our lives. If you're angry, if you're afraid, you're not thinking straight, you're not thinking about what's going on, and you make the wrong decisions. And the decisions will not get you the result that you want. We cannot, as a nation, get to a result to improve the situation on mass shootings and school shootings if we are emotionally conflicted. We'll never get there because we will miss the reasons. Okay, and let me start off with, first of all, being honest with everyone. Let's be honest. We aren't trying to fix the problem. That's the honest truth. We're not. We're so caught up in these 30-second sound bites and these bullet points telling us that we have to be afraid, that this is so terrifying, that this is going on, that we're going to all die. Our kids are going to die. We're so wrapped up in that thought that we're not dealing with the core issue. When was the last time you saw a study that was done, or that someone actually analyzed and said, these are the reasons why people are doing mass shootings? You just don't. I asked a question yesterday in the Facebook Live question and answer where I was on Facebook taking people's questions, and I asked a very simple thing. What is it that makes a 14-year-old, a 17-year-old, a 20-year-old decide that the only choice that they have left is to go out and kill random people? There's the question we have to answer. And that's not emotional. That's not fear. That's not anger. It's a serious question. And if we can answer that, we can get closer to trying to resolve the fact that there are mass shootings and there are school shootings. If we can't answer that question, it doesn't matter what other steps we take. They will still happen. We will still get 14-year-olds and 17-year-olds and 20-year-olds that will go out and say that they have no other choice but to go out and kill people. If we can't figure out why they're doing that, then we cannot stop it. So it doesn't matter. That's the first thing we have to address. And that's the real thing. And if we're upset, if we're angry, we're afraid, we will never get that answer, because we will never answer that question, because we're not doing it now. We're talking about everything but what makes that kid have that thought and then execute that thought. So we really have to step back and say, let's get rid of the emotion, let's get rid of the fear, and really address this. Because if we're not, then we're never going to get that answer. We have to be honest enough to be able to say that. And we have to be honest enough to say that our news media and many of our politicians don't want us to have that conversation. They don't want us to be non-emotional about this. They don't want us to actually calmly stop and think about this, because it's not good for them. It's not good for the news media, because the news media, well, they're looking for, very simply, ratings. It's not very good. I mean, how many times do you hear them talking about puppies in the news media? How many times do you hear them talking about any kind of positive, good thing, whether it's local or national media? You don't. That's not what sells eyeballs. What you see in a 24/7 news cycle is this rush, this drive to try and find the worst thing possible happening and to tell you about it 24/7, to keep it on a constant loop. Look at how horrible this is. Oh my God, look at this. It's a horror movie. That's what the news media is doing. They're providing you with a live 24/7 horror story so that you can say, oh my God, I can't watch this. It's a train wreck, and you're watching it live. That's what they're doing. It's playing on your emotions. It's why we have horror movies that do so well. Why? They're playing on your emotions, and it's the same thing with the news media. Horrible things sell well. It draws eyeballs, and they make money off of that. It's in their best interest to have you afraid. It's in their best interest to have you angry. And I'm sorry to say that. I mean, I don't believe many of the individual journalists want that, but that is what the corporations that own the news media stations want. They're a business. Their goal is to have you watching them. And the news that brings in the most people is the thing they want to focus on. And so they're focusing on the very worst aspects, and they're wording it in the very worst aspects so that you will come and watch them nonstop. That's just honest. That's just the reality. And politicians are looking at this as they get votes. The politician that stands up there and says, I'm just as afraid as you are. I'm afraid for your kids. Oh, so much fear. We have to do something. I'm going to do something, but you have to elect me. You have to re-elect me, because I'm going to take care of this for you. I'm going to fix this for you. I'm going to take away that fear. I'm going to take away that anger. I'm going to make you safe. I mean, that's what they're saying. I'm going to make you safe. I'm going to make your kids safe. I'm going to take away that fear so that you can live your life and you'll be happy. And all you have to do is trade your fear for your vote. Give me your vote and I'll do this for you, because that's what I'm here for. I'm your savior. I'm your champion, your knight in white armor, to help you out as long as you vote for me. because I have an answer. And quite honestly, there is no answer. I mean, let's also be very honest about that. We cannot stop gun violence or violence in general in the world. It's not possible. There is no nation in the world without violence of some form, whether it's knives, baseball bats, bombs, guns, whether that's coming from a religious basis or a financial basis or a sociological basis. The fact is, there is violence in the world. Always has been, always will be. And whether it's a gun or a bomb or a sword or just people's hands, it's going to happen. Even cars. We've seen that recently too. So to say that we will remove this, that we can stop this 100% is a lie. You're being sold a lie. If anyone's ever told you we can get rid of all the violence, we can stop all school shootings, we can stop all mass shootings, we can stop all gun violence, they are straight up lying to you. That is a lie. I don't care what country you're talking about, you will have it. How much is a different question. That is a different question. But to say that you're going to stop it, no, you're lying. Can we reduce it? Probably. Through various steps. And saying that this country or that country is able to do it doesn't really matter. Because that country and the other country have their own violence. And many countries replace gun violence with knife violence, or hands, or with bombs, or with cars. So it's not to say that you're going to stop all gun violence doesn't mean you're stopping violence, because evil and deranged people, mentally deranged people, will find a way, and they always do. So if we're going to honestly look at this, we can't look at other countries and say, well, they don't have as much gun violence as the United States. Well, they have more knife violence. They have more bombings. They have more hand-to-hand conflicts and murders, and they have more cars being used. You want to factor that in and then tell me again that they're better off? No, they're just different. Let's get rid of this idea that there's some ideal country in the world that doesn't have this violence. Yes, they do. It may be in a different format. It doesn't mean that it's better. You scale up any one of these nations to 327 million people that we have, and you'll see that that the overall violence, and if you're factoring it in, it's equivalent. It may not be the same. It's not, they're not using handguns. Okay, but they're using cars or knives. We see that with England and the United Kingdom. They use knives instead. They still have 40% of the murders are being done with handguns or firearms, but we still see that. But they also have another 40% of the violence being done with knives, which is not here in the United States, although there is a very large number of that as well. So you can't look at it that way. To look at it that way is to lie. And these things, and that's the important thing that we have to start with this honest conversation. Let's not lie to ourselves that that there's some miracle cure out there that will stop all the violence. It may change the way the violence is done. We may be even able to reduce it, but we're not going to get rid of it. And to say to ourselves that, well, there's this miracle cure, we just haven't figured out. No, there isn't. No, there isn't. That's the very first thing. We'll never get rid of it all, because there are evil people in the world. There are mentally deranged people in the world, and they always find a way. Always. But we can reduce this. And part of reducing it is figuring out, why are they doing it? What leads a person to the point where they say, the only answer I have is to go out and to kill innocent other individuals? When we can get to that, we can do a lot. But until we do that, we can't even begin to have an honest conversation. But let me take a quick break here, and then I'm going to come back, because I do have an idea of how to resolve this. I do believe, well, not resolve it completely, but to reduce it, to help address the core question of what makes a person get to that thought. And I'm going to get to that, but I'm going to take a quick break. and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me back here at No Soundbites Allowed with your host, Michael Voss. And I do thank you. I do thank you all for listening in and being part of this process, of being part of this conversation that we're having about a very serious issue about mass shootings and its subset, school shootings. And in the first segment, I was talking very much about the fact that we need to address this without the emotions, without the fear-mongering and the anger that the media and our politicians want us to have, because it's in their best interest. And we have to recognize it is in their best interest to do that, to manipulate our emotions and to manipulate the facts, either by not providing them or obscuring them and tilting them to their advantage. Because that's a reality. And that is what we're seeing there. And part of that is, and I want to get into some of the real numbers here, so that we have a real understanding of the scope of the problem. We're constantly being told in the news media that, oh my God, there's so much more violence going on right now. The number of school shootings is massively up. Oh my God, it's so horrible. The number of mass shootings are massively up. This is an epidemic that's going on. And the answer is no, it's not. No, it really isn't. And there's a lot of data out there that proves that. I know you're not getting that. You don't hear that. You don't see that on the news or on Facebook and other social media. You don't see that. And of course, you're not going to see that. It's not meant to. It's a snapshot that's meant to give you one emotion or one of two emotions, anger or fear. That's the snapshot that you're getting on Facebook, on social media, and in the news and from politicians. Be angry or be afraid. Neither of those are the answer, because they aren't real. The reality is that when we do studies, and there's Professor James Allen Fox out of Northeast University, I've quoted him several times. He's done a lot of studies on this. He's looked at this over the last 35, 40 years. He has a study out, which was published in 2013, December of 2013, where he found the number of mass shootings has been relatively constant between 20 to 30 mass shootings on average every year. And every year, approximately 100 people die due to a mass shooting. It's that simple. That number really hasn't changed. Now, and that's looking at all the sources out there, including Mother Jones and Guns Against Violence and all these other websites, looking at the data from the FBI and the CDC, putting it all together. That's the answer. 20 to 30 every year, with on average 100 people being involved. It's that simple. It really is. And the fact is that the overwhelming majority of these shootings are done by handguns, not AR-15s, none of them are done by assault weapons. Let's get rid of that too. See, that's another thing that's being done. You're being manipulated by being told things that aren't true. You're being used so that you can emotionally react the way that you're wanted. Because when people tell you, oh, they're using assault weapons. No, they're not. An assault weapon is a machine gun. That is an assault weapon. That is exactly the definition of an assault weapon. It's a machine gun. no one, or actually no one without a very restrictive Title I license, which is extremely restrictive and was created in 1934, has a machine gun. You just don't get them. And you haven't seen a single incident in the United States, and I don't know, at least the last 50 years that I've been alive, where someone has used a machine gun. It doesn't happen. What they're talking about, they have renamed a rifle. That's it. And that started in 1985 out of California, where a anti-Second Amendment advocate went out there and he decided to rename a rifle so that he could get people's fear for his political view, his partisan idea, to try and remove those guns. And it caught wildfire, and it's been promoted and used because assault weapon sounds a lot better on the news than semi-automatic rifle or just assault weapon, because they have that image in your mind from movies. Oh my God, it's an assault weapon. Oh, look at this gun. It fires forever. I mean, think about it. In movies, every firearm you've ever seen virtually never reloads unless it's dramatically necessary for the bad guy or the good guy to suddenly run out of bullets. That's about the only time in a movie you will ever see someone run out of bullets, because it makes a dramatic point in the action. But otherwise, firearms will fire forever. I mean, take a look at the movie Commando, or any of the First Blood Rambo movies. There's a lot of them. I mean, you can look at pretty much any action movie. Count the bullets, okay? You'll run out. The thing has infinite ammo. It's stupid. So they're not being honest with you. They're changing the definitions and meanings to emphasize an emotional reaction. It's dishonest. It's dishonest. Every time you hear a politician tell you, oh, they're using assault weapons, they are being dishonest with you. They are manipulating your emotions. Let's be honest about it. And that is because they have an objective. They have an outcome. They have a goal. And that goal requires you to follow their lead. And they can get there a lot faster and a lot easier if they have you emotionally manipulated to go with them. And if that wasn't the case, then they would be honest and say it's a rifle or a semi-automatic rifle. And if they were really honest, they would tell you that's not the problem. Somewhere around 20%, 20 to 27% of all mass shootings occur with a semi-automatic rifle, whether it's an AR-15 or something else. It could be an AK-47. It could be a whole host of them. A Ruger, Mini 14. They're all the same. They all have similar rates of fire. They have the same similar functions as a rifle, as do all semi-automatic rifles that are available to civilians. And the fact is that they'd be honest and say that. But only about 20 to 27% of all mass shootings use those firearms. 47% of all mass shootings use a handgun, with the remainder being usually shotguns. And when you know, in Santa Fe, that's exactly what we see. The shooter didn't use an AR-15. He didn't use a semi-automatic rifle. What he did use was a .38 revolver and a shotgun. It tells you something right there. It doesn't fit instantly. If you stop and just think for a second, wait a minute, we're trying to ban assault weapons. Well, if you want to go with that misnamed mislogic, that manipulation of your emotion, even if you did, it wouldn't apply to this shooter. And 47% of the time, it wouldn't apply to any of the mass shooters. It wouldn't, because they're not using that weapon. That is a relatively rare thing. So that's kind of scary when you think about it. I mean, think about it. Without the emotion, without being afraid, without being angry, when you think about it and say, well, you know, we're going to ban these things. The ban wouldn't have affected what he used. It doesn't affect what the majority of firearms that are used in mass shootings. It doesn't affect them, which has nothing to do with the fact that in Santa Fe, he was using bombs, pipe bombs, Molotov cocktails. He was using bombs. which are illegal and have been since 1934. So let's actually stop for a second and let's think about this. We know, as it has been proven by Professor James Allen Fox and also the Congressional Research Service, that on average, we're looking at 20 to 30 incidents of mass shootings, which include the subset, which are school shootings, every year for the last 40 years. That's a fact. Including when we had a gun ban before, that's a fact. In fact, according to the Congressional Research Service, and by the way, I have links on what I'm speaking about here. I'm going to provide that so you can see the data yourself and understand what's going on, because we have to have an understanding. If we don't understand what we're talking about, we can't understand the solution we're trying to provide. So let's understand what we're talking about. And according to the Congressional Research Service, in their publication, which was in reference to mass murder with firearms, incidents and victims, 1999 to 2013, they found that during the 1990s and going into the 2000s, the number of incidents were 4. There were 4 incidents, resulting in an average of about 6 victims and an average of 5 wounded. So 6 people killed, 5 people wounded. We're talking about from 1990 through the 2000s. No difference. No statistical difference. The exact numbers are 5.6 victims murdered and 5.5 wounded in 4 incidents in the 1990s, 4 incidents in the 2000s with 6.4 victims murdered, 4 wounded to be exact. There's no statistical difference. It's the same thing. And if you're saying, well, that can't be right. Well, that's what the Congressional Research Service has found. That's their numbers. Again, the reality, let's take away the emotion and deal with the reality, because we want to have a resolution. And the reality is, if you're going by this emotional reaction to say, well, we're just going to ban that type of firearm, the first thing we have to understand is the firearm that is being talked about, the quote assault weapon, end quote, which is actually a semi-automatic rifle, one is only handling those with cosmetic differences, not functional differences. So you're not protecting people from using any other kind of rifle. 2, it's not the most common weapon used. So you're not protecting people because you're not dealing with the major problem. There you go. There's 2 big things right there. So we're not actually dealing with the solution. When you hear politicians in the media and memes that are telling you you have to get rid of assault weapons, they are lying to you. They're not getting you closer to the actual solution because they're not dealing with the problem. The problem isn't the assault weapon, the rifle. It is only 20% of the time the weapon that is actually used. Most of the time it is a handgun. And I have to ask you, why are they not talking about the handguns if they want to protect people, since handguns are what is primarily used roughly 50% of the time? Shouldn't they be talking about handguns and restricting those? If their reason is to solve this, to resolve the situation. That's what you would think, except that's not what they're doing. So therefore, they're not working on fixing this. They're working on something else. For the media, that's getting eyeballs to the TV screen. For politicians, it's for re-election. That's what I believe it is. Because that's the only logical answer on why are they focusing on the thing that is the least part of the problem, not the biggest part of the problem. If you want to have a ban, which I disagree with, vehemently disagree with, but if you're going to have a ban, then actually address the major use and not the minor one. You'll save, if you want to have a ban, put it on handguns, and then you'll be able to save more people. But it's a disingenuous answer. It doesn't fix the problem. It doesn't answer the question, why does a shooter believe this is the only answer for them? That why are they still coming to this conclusion that I must kill innocent people? It doesn't answer that. Whether they're using a firearm, a Molotov cocktail, a car, or anything else, it doesn't answer the question. We could ban all cargo vans because they've been used to kill dozens of people in the United States and hundreds in other countries. That doesn't answer the question. It doesn't. So to say that that's the answer is to lie. It's a lie. It's not going to get you any closer. That is the honest answer because it doesn't address the question. It doesn't answer the root cause. It's a symptom. And in particular, it's the weakest part of the symptoms. So why are we bothering with that? Why is that the focal point? Because people want to be elected and it makes good news media to sell and it gets eyeballs. It's not honest. And I want to be honest with you here because I think there is part of a solution here. There is part of a solution. But when we keep lying and we keep throwing up these scapegoats to try and make people feel better, pulling wool over people's eyes so you can sleep better at night because they're saying, oh, well, I know what the problem is. It's video games. Do you remember that? In 2013, we were blaming it on video games. In the 1980s, we were blaming it on rock music and music videos. And now we're blaming it on what? We haven't even gotten to that part yet. We don't even know what to blame it on anymore. Because every time they come up with something that they want to blame it on, wait 5 years, it's not a factor. It doesn't apply. Music videos aren't the reason anymore. No one says that anymore. They were saying it in the 90s. In the 80s and 90s, they were talking about video games. And occasionally that comes up now. Oh, it's the video games that are doing it. Okay, what about kids who don't play the video games? What if they're not playing violent video games? What is that? If it were so bad, millions and millions of video games are being sold every year of all types, many of them violent in varying degrees. Why aren't we seeing millions and millions of kids going out and committing school shootings and school mass murders? Because it's not video games. It's not the music. Those are excuses. Those are ways to get you emotionally involved and to cloud your mind to actually looking at what is the real question. Why do they think that is the only option? So that they can execute and go forward with that option. That's a serious question. It's a serious question that we're not asking. And we need to as a nation. If we really want to do something about that, that is the question. Not video games, not music videos, not trying to ban specific types of firearms that have the least to do with the problem consistently over 4 decades. Because that's not honest. But I want to take another break and then we'll come back. And as I said, I am getting to what I believe is an answer, but I want to get through this because there's a lot that we need to resolve, to get past, to be able to get to that answer, to be able to have an honest conversation about what could be the answer. So we got to get rid of all this other garbage. We have to drop this baggage and actually look at this with clear vision and a clear mind and actually say, how can we fix this? What is a possible solution? Because right now we're being manipulated as a nation emotionally and no one's thinking about this clearly. I don't believe so. But I'll take another quick break and then we'll come back and we'll continue the conversation. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me back at the No Soundbites Allowed podcast for this very important podcast talking about firearms, talking about mass shootings, really, and also their subset, which is the school shootings, and talking about this in an honest way, because I don't see this being honestly talked about anywhere. I really don't. Not in the major media. You know, we look at social media, we see memes constantly blasting us emotionally about this. They're not being honest. We're looking at constantly on the news media. They're not being honest. They're not having an honest conversation. They don't even phrase the questions in honest ways. I mean, there was the USA Today came out with an article, and I have that right here. And I'm going to include this in the notes so you can look this up yourself. But USA Today was out there, and they're giving an excuse about the Santa Fe shooting, where they're talking about how it's less lethal to be using a shotgun, how it's there would have been so many more murders if it had been an assault weapon, which the kid couldn't possibly get a machine gun. So that's not even an honest statement. And they're instead using that instead of saying a rifle. And he used a handgun. So they're not being honest. Of course, they're just as lethal. They're just as lethal. To say that one is less lethal than another, that's a lie. That is just a straight up lie. And again, that's the emotional manipulation. They have an outcome. They have a gain. Why would you possibly say, oh, thank goodness he used, as horrible as this was, he was using a shotgun instead of a assault weapon, a rifle, because that would have been so much deadlier. How do you know that? That's a dumb statement. That's a dumb statement. It serves no purpose. That's not telling you news. That's manipulating your emotions. That's trying to make you think of this as if it was some kind of movie where you can imagine in a movie, this guy's using a shotgun, this one's using a machine gun, and oh my God, the machine gun's mowing people down, the shotgun's hitting one guy at a time. That's not reality. That has nothing to do with reality. That's not how firearms work. That's how Hollywood works. And to say that is disingenuous and it's dishonest and it's a manipulation of your emotions. And that's important. Because I want to get rid of that. Throw that baggage away. Stop that. I mean, it's good for selling newspapers. It's great for getting eyeballs onto CNN. But it's not really good at trying to resolve a problem. Because it doesn't, and I keep saying this over and over, and I'll say it again, it doesn't answer the question of why this person came to the conclusion that the only answer is to kill other people. There's your problem. How they did it, whether it was with a Molotov bomb or a pipe bomb or a shotgun or a car, it doesn't really matter. Because it still leaves us with the question. How they did it doesn't matter. It's why they did it. If we can answer the why, then the how will take care of itself. But it's dishonest. And, it's part of this dishonesty that we see in this conversation from beginning to end. From beginning to end, we're emotionally being manipulated. I mean, when you look at, and again, Professor James Allen Fox, he was looking at this. There was a report in 2018 from Gun Violence Archive, was just trying to say that there was 1,333 mass shootings from 2014 to 2017. Well, that's not really true, because over half of those, no one got killed, not even the gunman. And in 3/4 of those cases, there was only one person who was killed. That's not a mass shooting. It's an incident. It's a problem, but it's not being honest. And people are quoting this saying, oh, well, there's 1,300. There's hundreds of mass shootings every day. There's a mass shooting every day. No, there isn't. It's not honest. It's a manipulation of the facts and the numbers. And when you really look at that, you will find it is not true. And, and one of the other things another thing and I want to clear the air on all of these things that are distracting us from the real question. And then I'm going to get into my solution in this segment. But I just want to clear this up. I've done a lot of research on this, especially since 2013. I've written dozens. I've spoken at dozens of events, and I've done dozens of articles, maybe a couple hundred articles on the First Amendment, on the Second Amendment, and on mass shootings. And, I was looking at data from the, what was this? It was the FBI. And I have it right up in front of me. The FBI crime statistics from 2014, 2015, and 2016. And I will include this article, which has the data and also a link to the reports. And you know what? What we found is that even since 2014, after we saw all the changes across the country and trying to put in gun bans and make it restrictive, like the New York SAFE Act, that the real result was no change in the number of people who were murdered with firearms. There's no difference in the type of firearms that were used, which are almost entirely handguns. Even more shotguns were used than rifles in almost every single state in every single year. Knives dwarfed the number of people who were killed with rifles and even shotguns. Knives, not regular knives, were used more often. So we're not having an honest conversation. In many cases, people dying by someone's hand or a brick or a baseball bat or a car outnumbered the number of people who died with an assault weapon, or the quote assault weapon, which is really a rifle. So we're not having an honest conversation about that. But what does answer the question? What does answer the question that I have posed here today? What answers the question that why is going out and mass murdering other human beings, innocent human beings, is the only answer? And there's a couple of things. And I got a lot of this. Part of this came from my conversation with regular people like you listening right now when I did my Facebook Live Q&A. And the answer is, well, in part, how many people are on psychoactive drugs? That's a big question. We've seen consistently a lot of these shooters are on drugs that, and you see the commercials on TV all the time. Take this drug. Side effect, you may have suicidal thoughts. Take that drug. You may have suicidal thoughts. Take another drug. It may have suicidal drug effects. And because of this, you have 1, 2, maybe 3 different types of medications you're having. Each and every single one of them, to quit smoking or to clear up acne or to get rid of psoriasis. Just 3 that came off the top of my head may have suicidal tendencies. Well, you know what? If you're taking 3 of those types of drugs for 3 different kind of issues, and each and every one of them has a tendency to give you suicidal thoughts, well, you're multiplying the amount of thoughts that you're going to have about committing suicide. So maybe we need to rethink our psychoactive drugs that we're putting out there and making them so readily available and so well advertised. If it's a contributing factor, which I don't know, we haven't done a study on this. We haven't seen anyone do a report saying how many people who are doing mass shootings, which includes the subset of school shootings, are on psychoactive drugs. How many of these people started taking these psychoactive drugs when they were teenagers, when their bodies are still developing and the psychology, the physiology, our chemicals in our body are going on, just readjusting and they're haywire. And maybe those drugs are reacting with that. And that's causing them to have greater suicidal tendencies, which then is leading them down this path to that question, to that thought that there is no other answer than to kill everybody. Is that part of it? Because I believe it is. I believe that's a factor. We have a lot more of these psychoactive drugs in our society and more people using them on a far longer basis than we've seen in decades, I believe, although there is no conclusive data on that I'm aware of. I believe that's an accurate statement, and I know it's well more advertised today than it was 30 years ago. I'm alive for 50 years. I remember that. So, and these tendencies, this problem that these drugs cause, suicidal tendencies, that's a factor. I believe that is a factor, and we have to factor that in. So maybe it's reducing some of that. The other thing, and this comes from, and you can look up on YouTube, the millennial question, which was by Simon Sinek. And he has a great conversation about that and what's affecting the millennials and the generations after that. And I agree with parts of it. And in particular, I look at the lack of interaction, social interaction by our younger generations, which tend to be the mass shooters. They tend to be 30 and under. What are we seeing with these generations? Less social interaction. And that's a factor. We don't know how to our younger generations don't know how to have conversations or how to deal with rejection or how to deal with each other. They will sit next to each other. How many times have you seen this in a Starbucks, in a bar, in school? They will sit right next to each other and they will text to each other. Boyfriends and girlfriends, just friends and neighbors. They will text each other rather than actually have a conversation and speak with each other. They don't know how. They have less of that social interaction and know how to deal with that interaction, and why kids are so terrified of someone unfriending them, because that is their social interaction. And unfriending is suddenly this big, massive issue. It's their world is crumbling when someone unfriends them. And that is a factor. You know, when you don't have the ability to just walk up to someone and say, so what's the problem? What's going on? Talk to me. And maybe get an answer you don't like and live with it and deal with it. And if you can't do that, and that is your only interaction is on this medium that doesn't allow for context, that doesn't allow for nuance, that doesn't allow you to understand necessarily what the other person is saying, then there is this dehumanizing effect. You don't feel the same about people because you don't know people. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what they're feeling. You don't even know what you're feeling because it's not in there. There is no emotion in a text. There is no emotion in an emoji. There is no emotion in an email. Now couple that again with the fact that we have more psychoactive drugs out there. So a kid who's on a psychoactive drug that may cause suicidal tendencies and has less interaction with people and less capable of dealing with those personal interactions and the rejection that may happen, well, that builds up this whole problem. They have this impetus from medication to go out and to kill themselves, and this other impetus that says, I don't know how to deal with dealing with people and rejection and just having to deal with them. And that pressure of other people, of having to be around and to deal with other people while being on these suicidal tendencies from this medication. Is that a factor? Because I believe it is. Is that really one of the things that may be driving it forward? I think it could be. And I think that's something that has grown over the last half century. And I think that's a factor that we really need to look into, and perhaps in de-emphasizing that. I mean, really, why do kids need a cell phone in schools? They don't. I didn't. Many generations of America didn't. It's only because we have a 24/7 instantaneous technology now over the last 30 years that we've gotten accustomed to that we say, oh, we have to have it. No, you don't. You don't. Phones work still fine. Kids are generally safe and fine. There's 55 million students in the United States. Overwhelmingly, they're going to be fine day in and day out at school. That is the overwhelming fact. 99.9% of them are perfectly fine every day. So you don't need to be able to be in touch with them instantaneously. There's very few reasons why a kid would need a cell phone. But they use the cell phone anyway to do this non-interpersonal interactions. It only amplifies their separation from each other. It only magnifies the problems they have, and it magnifies, I believe, the potential of suicidal thoughts from these psychoactive drugs. There's a problem. What else could be involved in this? What else gives us that question and answers the question, why do you think that murder is the only answer? Because we de-emphasized it. We've de-emphasized that decision. As a society, it's not your fault. As a society, we've come out and we've said, well, there's always something else. It's someone else's fault. It's not your decision. It's not on you. And as a society, we have coddled our youth. We really have. Where we have to protect them from everything. We have to protect them from the evils of the world. We have to protect them from bad emotions. We have to protect them from things not going well. We have to give them participation prizes. Really? Oh, you came in last, but you get an award too because you were here. We have de-emphasized, dehumanized. We have taken away the very things that make us grow, that make them develop, because we put them in a cocoon. You're safe. You're okay. The world's not going to affect you. You're not going to have to deal with any of the bad things in life. That's a lie. That is a straight up absolute lie that we are telling kids. You're going to be fine. Everyone gets a reward. Everyone gets to succeed. You can be anything you want to be. You're fantastic. Lie, lie, lie. That's the honest answer. These are lies. We're putting them in this cocoon of safety and wonderful, and the world is great. And then they go and they have to deal with the world, whether it's at school or in a job or at college or with a girlfriend, a wife, kids. They have to go out and deal with all this. And their answer is, well, everything's fine and I'm going to be protected and they're going to take care of me. And no, you're not, because life isn't like that. That isn't how it works. You're going to have rejections. Things are going to fail. Things aren't going to work out. You're not going to get a reward for being last, for not achieving. You're not. So again, take that reality of the rejection that they're dealing with, which is not matching up the message that is being put out there, that they're going to be okay and that it's all taken care of and they're being protected from all the bad things in life. And here come the bad things in life. And they don't have anyone to talk to because they don't have social interactions. And then add that on to the fact that we have these psychoactive drugs that are making them think suicidally. Is this all a connection? I don't know. No one's done a study on this. They should. I hope they will. But I can tell you that thinking about it logically, take out the emotion. Logically, these are things that we see. Are they all connected in all cases? Maybe not. Are they connected in some cases? I think so. But if that's the chain that is leading them to that decision to kill innocents, then we need to figure this out. This could be the answer. This could be part of the answer. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but at least it's a conversation and it's a discussion. It's an avenue that leads us to a resolution and gets this solved. Not something stupid like a gun ban that absolutely has no impact on the fact that they're still making that decision. And they're going to use, if they can't get a semi-automatic rifle, they're going to get a shotgun. If they can't get a shotgun, they get a handgun. If they can't get which is the first thing that they're going to get anyway, because that's the thing that's used most of the time. And if they can't get that, they go out and they make a pipe bomb, or they get a car, or they use a knife. It all happens. And it's been happening. These are not new things. There is evidence of, I want to pull this up, back in, as an example, that this isn't new. Well, we had back in 1989 that there was an elementary school that was targeted and kids were killed in the playground. In 1998, there was a shooting for students because they used the fire alarm to make sure they can get students out. In 2005, we had kids that were killed because as soon as the kid went through the metal detector, he started shooting, killed the armed guard that was there. So let's think about this. The things that we're being told are the answers are not new. We have schools, many schools. I went to school 30 years ago, and my school had a metal detector and had school resource officers, actually police officers that were there in plain clothes. This is not new. This isn't a new concept. And I was in New York City in the Bronx. So it's not a new concept. We have the schools, Arizona has that right now. Lots of schools do. It's not a new concept. So we've done that. And we've seen that it has failed in the past because a metal detector isn't a prevention. It's not even an early warning. It is an imminent warning that right this second, there is someone who's got a gun. And guess what? That person knows it. So they know the alarm's going to go off. And just as it happened in 2005, they're probably going to start shooting right then and there. Because the metal detector doesn't stop them from coming in. It doesn't stop them from shooting. It just means they're going to shoot right then and there. And so that doesn't answer the question in trying to harden our schools. Limiting the number of entrances and exits don't help. Because yes, that means there's fewer ways for someone to get in. It also means there's fewer ways for people to get out. And if someone pulls a fire alarm, or if they're already inside the school building somehow, there's only so many ways you can get out of the building now. And the kids are trapped. That's a target-rich environment. We have created a target-rich environment. That is a problem. School resource officers are a nice middle ground. But again, officers can be shot, as it was in Santa Fe. Or they could not react, like we saw down in Florida. So that's not an answer either. In combination, maybe some of these things can be used together and they help to minimize it. But like I said, that already exists and it has existed for decades. This is not a new idea. It may be new to talk about it as a nation, but it's not a new idea. So the answer isn't how do we make the schools harder targets or how do we defend the kids in the schools? These aren't new things, but they don't answer the question of why is the kid doing it in the first place? We are putting our energy in the wrong place. We are being misdirected because it allows politicians to get reelected. It allows news media to have shows, and that distracts us from the actual cause. We need to be honest about this, and we need to be less emotional about it. I understand you're worried about your kids, your neighbors, your friends, your family. I understand that. But fear doesn't give you the answer. It will never give you the answer. But addressing some of the things that I'm talking about, like, hey, let's deal with the psychoactive drugs. Let's deal with the lack of interaction. Let's deal with the false image of life that we are providing to these kids, the coddling that we're providing to them. Those things put together, I think, get us a lot closer to why do we see school shootings and why do we see mass shootings. I think those are factors. And I think if we can resolve that we can get to something that helps to address this. It will never get rid of it. Evil people, people with malicious intent, people who are mentally deranged will always find a way. And they do. And they have. And we cannot prevent that forever. And we have a free society. We have the freest society in the world, which means that we are able to do things that are wonderful benefits to each other and in the world, and also are absolutely horrible. But that doesn't change if you get a more restrictive government, that you have a government that doesn't allow you to do things. Guess what? In England, you can't get a handgun. It's illegal. And yet, 40% of the violence in England is with a firearm. You know, they're with handguns. People are dying from handguns. It's not illegal. It's illegal in England and the United Kingdom, and it has been since the 1700s. But yet people still get the firearms and still use them. So the answer is not, oh, well, we're just going to ban them. We have lots of countries that do that. Most of Europe has some kind of restriction on owning firearms and the use of those firearms if the government allows you. And these countries have violence too. Bans are not the answer. Dealing with the symptoms is not the answer. Saying that it's an AR-15 is the problem. Or back in the 90s, it was a AK-47. Yeah, we went, and a lot of people forget that. We initially were talking about AK-47s in the 80s and 90s, and that was the big thing. And now it's the AR-15, and that's the big thing. And quite honestly, it's neither of them, really. It's not a specific type of gun. It's not a specific type of firearm or the number of bullets that it has. That's not it. Again, Columbine in Texas, in Santa Fe, they're using bombs that were illegal since 1934. Let's think about this. In Santa Fe, just like in Parkland, it is illegal for the kid to have gotten the gun to get the gun that they had. So they illegally obtained a firearm. They went into a gun-free zone, which is illegal. They broke that law. It's illegal to attempt to commit murder and to commit murder. They broke that. It's not the laws. It's not whether the found all the way throughout the entire process. Putting in another law doesn't make you safer. Trying to address the symptoms and not the cause doesn't make you safer. If we're having the honest conversation, we have to have that honest reality put right in front of us. What we need to do is address the root cause. Let's study that, let's figure that out, and then let's answer that. Because if we don't, we will never get any closer than we are today, and probably far worse going to the future. That's what I believe. But I've been talking a lot, and I've gone well over time. Oh, look at that. So I'm going to take a break. Actually, I'm going to let you go. I look forward to hearing your comments. I will include links of everything I've been talking about so that you can look up the information for yourself and draw your own conclusions. Please tell me, what do you think is the cause? What do you think we can do? And how can we really, honestly, not emotionally, but honestly, factually resolve this or try and fix this problem? I look forward to hearing from you all. Thank you.
Signals coming from the canyon. I've been searching for my companion for so long.